So I don't want to give you a whole lot of the information or background in Ephesians, but Ephesians is the book that is going to help us to remind ourselves the importance of our second core value. We began 2 weeks ago by first Sunday of the year by bringing or presenting the importance or an overview of the church. And if you were here 2 weeks ago, I invited you to go to Matthew chapter 16 and the conversation between Jesus and the disciples where Jesus asked them directly the question, who do people say that I am? And the disciples gave Jesus the typical religious fill-in-the-blank answer by saying, you are, according to the people, according to what's going on in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, some say that you are John the Baptist, Elijah, one of the prophets, maybe Jeremiah. And Jesus moves from that kind of a right and religious answer to personally and kind of a, again, the intimacy of the question says, who do you say I am? And through the conversation of the first week, we concluded that the church was created literally to disarm hell. To the point that we said at the end of the reading that Jesus makes a statement that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. The implication is that the church is always on the offensive mode. Hell is always on the defensive mode. In other words, the church is not here to protect itself from Satan. Satan protects himself from us. Not only that, but in this battle between offensiveness and defensiveness, Satan has no weapons against us because nobody goes to war with gates. You're going to use weapons, artillery, to go to war. And it seems to me that once the church is embraced through the lenses of the gospel, we become an unstoppable force. So, coming to last year's, well, I will say 2 years ago, celebration of our centennial is a tangible reminder of the faithfulness of God. Us, the church, celebrate 100 years of existence, ministry, legacy, gospel preaching, is exactly the promise of Matthew chapter 16. Now, from that overview, we moved into week 1, which was last week. And if you remember, I have invited you for now 3 weeks to look at our core values right on top of our bulletin where it says love God, love others, and love the world. This love God, that's what we did last week, and we concluded, this is how we finished, okay, our conversation last week, that based on Paul's interaction with multiple philosophers, multiple diverse culture in Athens through Acts chapter 17, as he speaks on Mars Hills, he describes how everybody worships. And we basically said that loving God is worship to God, but in this case, I told you last week as we close our time, that unless the character, the righteousness, the holiness of God is revealed and embraced, we're only having a social gathering. Worship must experience, worship must unpackage, unfold the character of God. So today what we're going to do, I'm going to ask you now to go into to value number 2, which is the love for others. Because here's where we're going for the next few minutes. I want you to think on what happens when you and I worship and we embrace the character of God. What is the result of those things? See, for us, we remind ourselves that at the end of the day is not worship what truly matters. At the end of the day is not prayer what truly matters. At the end of the day is not the faith that we have. Those 3 things, like everything else, but specifically those 3 things that we can continuously preach and teach about, it's not about worship, it's not about prayer, it's not about faith. It's about the object of those 3 elements. I'm going to say that one more time. It's about the object because once again, when you worship, if the character of God is not revealed and is not embraced and adopted, you just had a social gathering. When it comes to prayer, once again, you may pray, and I love for you to pray, and we need to pray, but your prayer only has value, only finds its purpose when you increase, not your prayer, but the object of your prayer. So when you and I pray and we say, in the name of Jesus, what we're saying is this. Everything I just everything I just uttered, everything I just presented, I am affirming that you will answer this prayer because it's lined up with the character of Jesus. So today, if you are going through a season that you don't feel that you're worshiping, if you're going through a season where you don't feel that you're praying where you're supposed to pray, or you don't know how to pray, or you have to stop praying, or you may be going through a season where you don't know where your faith is, and you may be going through a crisis of faith, all that I'm going to ask you is to think about the purposes of those practices, those spiritual disciplines. They are extremely important, but we have to remind ourselves, prayer, worship, faith, and everything in life is always based on the object of those things. Now, the result of this worship, that's where we're going today, is the fact how we love others. And there's no better way for me to illustrate this as, I don't know if you pay attention or heard the news over this past week and actually the previous week, but this iconic university in North Carolina, Duke University, originally made the statement, originally opened up this whole transition where Fridays, and if I'm not mistaken, they just backed down from it, but at the beginning it was alarming, at least to me. Every Friday of this iconic university, built and created through the Methodist churches or Methodist denomination, Methodist beliefs and worldview, they open up every Friday, 1 p.m. for a prayer for Muslims. And the Islamic community will gather every Friday at 1 p.m. to come and pray. So this is a perfect example that the real issue is not prayer. What's the issue? The object of our prayer. Everybody follow me on this? Now here's what I have to make a little bit of a justice and a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to what's happening in our culture. Because you may alarm yourself that and again, I don't have time to get into all this in detail, but this is one of the universities that has totally moved into what you and I call secularism. Yeah? Everybody with me on this language? I don't need to explain that, right? It has become secular. And here's the point of the story. I understand why cultures or institutions or governments or nations gradually or radically move into secular mindset and practices. But if you think about it, for us as a nation, this is one of the representatives of this, for us as a nation, we have been in this moral revolution, moral wagon to find equality among our communities. So we want to make sure that nobody's offended. We want to make sure that everybody is included. And when you have a university like this that was originally built on the grounds of the biblical Judeo-Christian worldview, it has to be alarming and shocking. Because we're doing these things in the name of equality. In the name of just bringing everybody into the same boat. Now, it seems to me that unavoidably, we were created for this. We don't have cable at home. So for us, Netflix is as our friend, if you know what I'm talking about. And one of the things that I get on my email with Netflix is that they send me, via email, Netflix sends me the new releases that are on Netflix. Because after a while, we can only watch the same shows, you know. You need some new things in there. And one of the movies that came recently on Netflix, they're not new movies. I mean, some of them are new, but this one is a classic, so to speak. But it is Cast Away. And Cast Away is basically the representation of what I'm giving you on the screen, because it is that God-given need for community. That eventually Tom Hanks ends up talking to a volleyball by the name of Wilson, because Wilson has his blood printed on the ball, and that need of community that he is driving himself crazy by being in isolation. So what we're going to do this morning is I'm just thinking of what our culture is doing by embracing this whole thing of just bringing everybody together. Let's not offend anybody. Let's make sure that we find equality in our culture, because at the end of the day, this is a God-given desire. I'm not in agreement